Hello and welcome to the first of our series of orientation presentations for outbound exchange student candidates. My name is Jeff McFarlane and I'll be your host for this and the other presentations. My job on the Youth Exchange Committee is to help make sure that youth exchange candidates and their parents are ready for exchange. With me for this presentation is Linda Norris. Linda is our lead country coordinator. Hi, Linda.
Hi, Jeff. How are you doing?
Not too bad, thanks. Can you tell us a bit about your experience with Youth Exchange and your job as lead country coordinator?
Absolutely. I've been with Youth Exchange for many years and have played many roles, but this role is generally to make sure that we do a partnership agreement with various districts around the world, and we agree to the inbounds and the outbounds as to what the rules and regulations are.
Perfect. Thanks, Linda. I think that the first thing we should do is explain the term I used at the very beginning here, and that's exchange student candidate. Students, while you've been selected by your sponsor club, you don't actually become an exchange student until the minute you step on the plane. Until then, you've still got a series of interviews and a number of orientations that you have to go through. And the Youth Exchange Committee may remove you from the program anytime before that. So it's important that you pay attention during these orientations and continue to do your best and make sure that you're ready for exchange. So we're going to continue on now with our presentation. This first presentation is entitled, What is Rotary Youth Long-Term Exchange? And basically the purpose of this orientation this presentation is to give potential exchange students and their parents or guardians information that'll help them to determine if they'd like to pursue their application for long-term youth exchange. One of the first questions we usually get is, why is it that Rotary is involved in Rotary Youth Exchange? And to answer that question, if you knew a little bit about Rotary, which you will do by the time we're done our orientation process, you'd know that one of our 6 areas of focus is promoting peace. Rotary Youth Exchange program seeks to promote world peace and understanding one student at a time. The Rotary Code of Conduct the Rotary Code of Policies states the Rotary Youth Exchange Program provides young people with the opportunity to meet individuals from other countries, experience new cultures, and to learn firsthand about all aspects of life in another country. Host clubs, host families, and entire communities are enriched by extended, friendly contact with someone from a different culture. The program instills in young people the concept of international understanding and goodwill. Rotary Youth Exchanges started back in 1929, and now somewhere in the neighborhood of 8,000 young people participate in a Rotary Exchange each year. In District 5360, we generally require students to be between 15 and a half and 17 and a half years old when they leave on exchange, and that would be sometime in mid-August of the year that they go. Some districts may have some other rules, and you may have heard other age ranges or seen other things published on the internet. But in District 5360, we promote this age range for a couple of reasons. First, we've found that younger students generally have a better chance of success while on exchange, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in our next presentation. But generally speaking, older students seem to have a little bit more trouble making friends and integrating into the school groups. And secondly, the majority of districts that we exchange with have rules related to who they can accept as inbound students, and Linda's going to talk about that a little later on. So sometimes there are restrictions related to visas, and sometimes there are restrictions related to school admissions, but whatever the case, there are some districts who will not accept students that are over 18 when they arrive. So I realize that some of the students that we accept are from time to time older than that age range. It just means that it could possibly be that we have fewer places that we're able to send them to. So if we're going to talk a little bit about what a Rotary Youth Exchange is, a Rotary Youth Exchange is both a cultural and an educational exchange. On the educational side, first and foremost, that means that students are allowed to stay in the country that they're going to for an extended period of time because they're on a student visa, which requires them to go to school. So in order to get their visa, students will receive what's called a guarantee form. And again, Linda might talk a little bit more about that later. And a letter from a school stating that they have been accepted to study there. Failure to attend school or getting kicked out of school may invalidate the visa and require the student to return home. In most cases, courses that students take while they're abroad on exchange don't qualify for credits with Alberta education. And that usually means that exchange students attend a fourth year of high school in order to graduate. It is indeed possible to graduate on time and with your current classmates, if you haven't already done so. But that requires a little bit of advanced planning. It can be done by taking some summer school classes and some ADLC or correspondence courses during the time that before your exchange and the time after your exchange. But it's generally a much harder thing to do and requires that advanced planning. We generally discourage students from taking correspondence or online courses while they're away on exchange. So if graduating is something that's really important to you, it's possible to do, but requires that advanced planning. Rotary Exchange is more than just an educational exchange, though, and really provides an opportunity for students to integrate into their host culture. Generally, students will live with 3 or 4 host families during their exchange. This happens for a couple of reasons. First, not every student will be a good personality match with every host family. If the match is not perfect, both parties know that the situation is not permanent and can work to tolerate each other at least until a change occurs. Second, culture is not uniform from one family to another. Just as living with a different family here in southern Alberta may be an entirely different experience than living at home, getting an opportunity to live with multiple host families in the host country may expose students to different elements of the culture. Students should be aware that host families come in all shapes and sizes. Host parents may be younger or older. There may be other children at home, or there may not. Host parents may be Rotarian, or they may not. And while it's technically against Rotary International rules, some host families with children who are away on exchange are obligated to be host families. In some cases, outbound families are even required to arrange all or some of the host families for inbound students. Here in District 5360, we don't require that families of outbound exchange students host inbound students, but we do highly encourage it because it's really a great experience. I think equally as important about as talking about what an exchange is talking about what an exchange is not. A Rotary exchange is not a vacation. So as I've already mentioned, students must attend school. Students also usually find out rather quickly that they're not guests in their host families. Host families are encouraged to treat exchange students as they would their own children. That means they'll be expected to do chores and otherwise help out around the house. Students should recognize that host parents are not maids, butlers, or chauffeurs. A Rotary exchange is not a travel exchange. While students may go halfway around the world to live, they may end up in a small town miles from nowhere and never leave. Many host families and many host Rotarian clubs make an effort to show off their country to touring students, but any opportunity for students to travel is a bonus and not a right. Almost all districts are going to have rules around travel, and the students need to learn what they are and to live by them. In many cases, there will be an opportunity to travel available to students while they're on exchange toward the end of their exchange. For example, students in Europe may have the opportunity to go on what is called Euro Tour, during which time they'll go by bus with many other exchange students to visit several European countries over a period of 2 weeks or so. Lastly, Rotary Exchange is not a gap year program. Graduated students will generally students who have graduated in Alberta will generally be over 18 at that by the time they graduate, so that would make them ineligible for the program in lots of different districts. And certainly you have to remember that even though you're graduated, you would have to go to school anyway. Timing of exchange. Because exchange is based on going to school, students generally leave their home and travel abroad in the last couple of weeks of August. Likewise, they are expected to stay in their host district until school ends, which is usually in late July. District 5360 does exchange with a couple of districts where the school year does not match our own, namely Brazil and Chile in the past. In both of these cases, being that those countries are in the southern hemisphere, they work on the opposite school year that runs from January around to, well, actually it's probably February around to December sometime. And in those cases, students end up attending the second semester of one school year and the first semester of a second school year while having a summer vacation somewhere in the middle. Linda, do you want to tell us a little bit about Rotary districts and multi-districts?
Sure, but before I go there, I just want to correct school usually late June, not July.
Oh, sorry. Yep. That's what happens when you record something live.
There you go. So the Rotary world is divided into districts. So if you think of District 5360, it's made up of clubs in southern Alberta and southwest Saskatchewan, which is a very small portion of all of Canada, if you think of it that way. So exchanges are arranged on a district to district basis. So although we give a country option to the student, where in that country they go is not always something that we know right away. So to say that we exchange with Mexico, for example, is not technically correct. We may have an exchange agreement with District 4150 along the Pacific coast of Mexico. So when we send a student on exchange to Mexico, he or she will go to the district and nowhere else. Some Rotary districts have decided to combine the administration of the youth exchange programs into what are called multi-districts. For example, there are 13 Rotary districts in Italy, but youth exchange is divided into just 2 multi-districts, one of 2 districts and one of 11 districts. So if our agreement is with a larger multi-district, our outbound student may be hosted anywhere in those 11 districts, for example. Likewise, our inbound student may come from any one of those districts, and it may not be the same district as the one that our outbound is going to.
Perfect. And can we move on to talk about your actual job and exchange agreements?
Yes, and that's what I'm in the middle of right now. In order to participate in the youth exchange, a Rotary district must first be certified by Rotary. That's the first hurdle. And in order to be certified, we must maintain certain levels of liability insurance. We must screen all of our students and volunteers. We must provide volunteer and sexual abuse and harassment training. We must provide orientations for both inbound and outbound students, and we must ensure that each inbound student is hosted by a Rotary club in the district. So Rotary International audits each district every 3 years to ensure compliance. Every adult member of every host family and every Rotarian involved with youth has, in theory, we're always working on it, been screened and given training in dealing with young people. Host families, definitely. Of course, this cannot guarantee that exchange student will never experience issues. Rotary is no less immune to bad characters than any other organization. But Rotary leadership takes the well-being of exchange students very seriously. The exchange between 2 districts is governed by the agreement that we mentioned earlier, signed by the chairman of youth exchange for each district. And in that agreement, the districts agree on the number of students to be exchanged. We generally exchange 1 for 1. They will maintain the RI certification, so each club that is hosting must declare that they are doing what and have done what is necessary, and that they will properly select, we will properly select and prepare their students, our students, and that students will be assigned an inbound counselor, the ones coming into Alberta. So the agreement may also give details such as the number of required host families. For District 5360, we have a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 4. The ideal number is 3. We agree on the amount of an allowance paid monthly to the students, the dates that the students are to arrive and to depart. And most agreements specify an age range for students. Jeff touched on this. Our age range is 15.5 to 17.5, although we do, for a few students, allow 18 if we can find places to place them. The members of the District 5360 Youth Exchange Committee meet with their peers from around the world at various conferences. Each year, we try to send at least 1 person to the North American Youth Exchange Network, called NAEN conference. And there are also conferences for EMA, Europe, East Mediterranean and Africa, and other organizations each year. each annual Rotary International Convention is also preceded by a conference by the youth exchange officers. And we try to take advantage of any of these conferences to learn and expand and tighten our program.
Okay, Linda, you have been to one or two.
I have been to the NAIN a couple of times, and I've been to the International Pre-Convention. And we do get to meet our counterparts, and that face-to-face relationship really helps when we do have difficult situations or we have exceptions that we need to discuss with our counterparts. So it's a great forum, and we also learn how other districts are handling certain things. For example, in Europe, the data protection rules are very strict now. So in North America, we're trying to keep up and change our data protection rules as well. So yes, they're excellent forums.
Perfect. Linda, can you go on to talk about clubs and counselors a little bit? These include some terms that we use that may require a little bit of definition for people that aren't familiar with the program. So we talk an awful lot about host clubs and sponsor clubs and inbound and outbound counselors.
Right. So exchange students are always sponsored by a Rotary Club in District 5360 and hosted by a Rotary Club abroad. So students will have a counselor from both their sponsor and their host clubs. So the sponsor club is us. We're the ones sending the student, and we have what we call an outbound counselor who is assisting the outbound student to prepare to go. The primary job of both counselors is to ensure that the success of the exchange and to be there for the students should they require assistance. Unfortunately, not all counselors pursue their responsibilities with the same vigor. Outbound counselors in District 5360 are required to attend orientations with their student in January and March. We then encourage them to have a regular contact with their student while they're away. And on the other side, we expect the club counselors will make an effort to connect with their students on a regular basis to discuss any issues, including school, host families, or Rotary specific issues. This doesn't always happen, however, Jeff, and sometimes our students meet their counselors only infrequently, or in some cases, never at all. This is where the students need to have a little bit of initiative and a little bit of je ne sais quoi, drive to be able to find a way to fill that gap. So not all Rotary clubs around the world are the same. We expect our inbound students to attend the meetings of their host Rotary club on a regular basis and to be part of all of the events, including volunteering. They're generally required to make a presentation to the club shortly after arrival and just before they leave. The inbounds from around the world are also usually required to make a short speech to their club every week just to tell the members what they've been up to and how things are going. This is also where some of those students, again with the drive, indicate what sorts of things they would like to do so that the members can sort of reach out and give them a hand with that. So while abroad, our outbound students may not have the same connection with Rotary. In fact, we know that some districts restrict their attendance at meetings. They don't require students to attend regularly. In fact, some clubs prefer not to have the students attend except for predetermined, sometimes special events. Some Rotary meetings are more business oriented, while others may be nothing more than a social gathering. It's not uncommon for clubs abroad to be all male or for there to be large amounts of alcohol present. Students may not feel welcome at such meetings. Want me to go into the commitment?
I certainly would, yes.
All right, so this exchange is a 3-year commitment. During the first year, we are recruiting the student in the fall. The student makes application, and then they have interviews, generally in November, and are selected as a candidate by the club. In January, students attend their first orientation. They go through a second round of interviews by the district committee, and then find out where they will be going. In March, there's a second orientation attended by the candidates, their parents, the club counselors, and recently returned ROTEC students. There is one final orientation in May. The second year starts when the student leaves on exchange and ends when they return. The third year begins with a debriefing for student and parents in August. So just to make it clear, a Rotary year goes from July 1st to June 30th. So that's why it sort of sounds like a longer period. Finally, the exchange program comes to an end for students when they attend the orientation for the next outbound students. So they are the rebound students attending that March orientation that our new students are being briefed on. This March orientation, I just want to say it's critical that at least one parent, the club counselor, and the student is at this. And it is an overnight, so they must prepare for that weekend, and the dates are always given weeks and weeks, months in advance. So
Right.
critical.
Linda, one of the big questions that especially the parents are going to have is, what is this going to cost?
All right. Well, first of all, the cost is $7,000. I notice on the slide it says, Mike, does it say 7,000?
It's 65.
No, it's 7,000. So it's actually 6,000 with a $1,000 performance bond. So 6,000 covers the airfare, food and accommodation at all of the orientations, and there could be 5, there may be 6. We did do a second one in November for the returning. It covers their Rotary blazer, and it may cover things such as Rosetta Stone. We're trying to find a way to get that. So some Rotary clubs participating in 5360 cover some or all of this fee for the students, the $6,000. Others provide a scholarship to students when they go off to university after having successfully completed their exchange. That $1,000 we talked about a little bit earlier is a performance bond. And this bond is returned to the students who successfully complete their exchange at their final March orientation, so the second time they go to the March. Deductions may be made from the bond if students fail to submit all of their required quarterly reports, 4 of them, of course, so that's $100 each, or they miss attending an orientation at $300 each. So if you add all of that up, if they missed everything, it obviously adds up to more than $1,000. So it does penalize, and we do it. This is a serious program, and we do expect the students to report and attend all orientations. The fee does not include the costs associated with obtaining a passport or a visa. Some students may be required to travel at their own cost for an in-person interview in order to get a visa. And as we're building these partnership agreements, Jeff, we're trying to keep those to a minimum. And if there is travel, we try and keep it within Western Canada to keep those costs down. All Rotary Exchange students are required to have medical and liability insurance that meets Rotary International specifications. They may subscribe for insurance sponsored by District 5360, or they may be required to buy the insurance sponsored by their host district as set out in the exchange agreement. And the prices vary, but the insurance premiums are going to average between $1,000 to $1,200 for the year. During their year abroad, students are not required to pay for their room and board, their tuition for school, or for mandatory Rotary functions, and many of them get to go to district conference. They may, however, be required to pay for language camp or language lessons, school supplies, extracurricular activities, cell phone usage, personal expenses, if they want to go shopping for clothing, toothpaste, any additional travel or tour opportunities that they wish to take advantage of. Each exchange agreement will specify an amount or a range of amounts that students are to receive from their host club as an allowance each month. The allowance is intended to offset some of the personal expenses that may not be covered by host families and is usually in the $150 to $200 Canadian range. The amount will vary from club to club, and not all clubs are diligent about paying the allowance on a timely basis. We also find that most students find that they need to supplement that allowance a tiny bit.
Great. Okay, thanks, Linda. So that is pretty much the end of the presentation part of what we wanted to accomplish in this first orientation presentation. Just in conclusion, I wanted to say that Rotary Youth Exchange can be a very rewarding experience. It's a chance to learn a new language, to learn a new culture, to make friends in all corners of the world, not only in your host country, but exchange students from all over the world, and to develop a family-like bond with those who accept you into their home. It's very common for students to return to their host city and visit their host family and friends and Rotarians long after they've completed their exchange. It's also common for exchange students to visit each other or to get together in groups all over the world. There is a Rotex International Convention that will be happening in July in Brazil, and I know that a number of our returning exchange students will be attending that. Many return to their second homes to study in university, and a few have even chosen to make their lives in their adopted countries. It's certain that this experience will change you. You'll be more mature when you return. I'm going to catch up on the slides here while we do it. There we go. Certainly the experience will change you. You'll be more mature when you return home. You'll be more independent. You'll see the world and everything that happens through different eyes. It won't always be easy, but I guarantee you that it'll be worth it. So if you're ready, let's get started with the rest of the presentations. As with all of our presentations, there's an assignment that goes along with this one. So please return to the Google Classroom and take a look at the assignment there. Thanks, Linda, for helping out today. Both Linda and I look forward to meeting you at our first orientation in January. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you.